Now, anyone can get into a row with a taxi driver. I've been in one or two myself, but what a taxi journey. David Lammy and his missus, at public expense, were in Italy for King Charles's state visit to that country. I don't know why. I don't know why King Charles was on that visit. I don't know why David Lammy had to be there. There were rather a few important things going on in the world at the time, but leave that to one side. Why David Lammy had to take a taxi from Italy to a ski resort in France is a very great mystery, and an even bigger mystery is who was going to pay for it, or whether it was paid for at all. The taxi driver is suing the British Foreign Secretary for more than £600 in an unpaid taxi bill. He says David Lammy is accusing him of having stolen cash and luggage belonging to the happy couple. Very happy when you can take a taxi from Italy to France. Now, I've no idea who's right and who's wrong. Both reported it to the local police station, who must have wished that the British visitor had not descended amongst them. But the outcome sums up to me the downhill course of British foreign policy. I've said to you before that David Lammy is without doubt the most undistinguished occupant of the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office there has ever been since the establishment of that august place all those centuries ago. This man is the Idi Amin of British politics, yet he blunders around like the original Idi Amin with his ham-fisted, mutton-chopped, increasingly corpulent being, wrecking Britain's relations with most of the world. The European Union doesn't like us much. Didn't like us even when we were in it. Definitely don't like us since we left. And he has single-handedly sought to bring about further wreckage in every part of the world where Britain has legitimate interests, where British people have to travel and have to do business. It's about time. It was taxi for Lammy, and Keir Starmer is a fool if he does not realise this. This taxi-gate may be the last straw for Idi Amin. But there's much more important things going on in the world just in the last half hour. So I'm having to scrap what I was going to say to you. A remarkable situation has arisen whereby a member of the European Union, a member of NATO, the Republic of Hungary, whose Prime Minister Viktor Orban is a constant thorn in the flesh of both NATO and the European Union, because he insists that he does not want Hungary to be at war with Russia. Hungary may be in the process right now of invading Ukraine from its southwest. 24 hours ago or so, Hungarian tanks were on the move near the Ukrainian border. I thought this a very peculiar development. Then earlier today, it was reported that the Hungarian Air Force had shot down 2 Ukrainian drones in Hungarian airspace. And now I see breaking news footage of the Hungarian Air Force in the air over the borderland between Hungary and Ukraine. Now, sharp-eyed viewers will know that I've been telling you for some time that both Hungary and Romania, and actually also Poland, all have territorial demands on what was the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine. In Hungary's case, it is the Transcarpathian region. There, the people speak Hungarian. They are actually Hungarian people, but they have been trapped inside the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic since the end of the Second World War, and Hungary wants the territory back. And I guess Viktor Orban, in for a penny, in for a pound, is seizing the opportunity of Ukraine playing funny games with Hungary's sovereignty to strike back and to strike a blow for his compatriots in the Transcarpathian region. If Simeon wins the presidency of Romania, you can be sure that he will not wait long to raise the demands of the Romanian population, equally trapped inside the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine, and perhaps demand the return of those territories. And Poland, well, all of Ukraine used to be in Poland. This is an important truth that I've told you many times, but maybe the historical and geographical complexities have not entirely dawned on every one of you. Ukraine did not exist, would only ever have existed, but for the Soviet Union, but for Stalin, actually, and then Khrushchev, who added territory after territory, including Crimea, to the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine. There is no Ukraine. That's the truth of the matter. Ukraine means the edge, the borderland of the Russian state. Kiev used to be the capital city of Russia. The Russian emperor sat in a palace in Kiev. Why am I laboring these apparently obscure historical points? Well, you've been led to believe that Ukraine is an historic and concise, contiguous piece of territory that has forever been Ukraine, that forever speaks Ukrainian, but it doesn't. In Lvov, they speak Polish. In Transcarpathia, they speak Hungarian. In other parts of the country, they speak Romanian. And of course, famously, in more than 1/3 of the territory, they speak Russian. It was the Bolsheviks that created Ukraine, and yet it is the new Bolsheviks in the Kremlin, as the West like to describe them, that are taking the rap, the blame for the current mess. Which brings me to Istanbul, where actually I could have been today, but I'm not, because I simply have to get home to see my children. But if I had been in Istanbul today, I would not be expecting President Vladimir Putin to arrive. There never was any declaration that President Putin would go to Istanbul. Instead, he sent two of his most senior men, including his most senior man, Sergei Lavrov, the doyen of foreign ministers, the greatest foreign minister on the planet, is there in Istanbul, ready to conduct negotiations with Zelensky or anyone else that Zelensky deputizes, delegates the right to negotiate to. Now, Zelensky is lying when he tells you that only he can negotiate on behalf of Ukraine. But insofar as there's any question about that, that's because Zelensky himself passed a law making it illegal for any Ukrainian official to negotiate with Russia. He says that he is exempt from that law, but in truth, he is not. So either nobody in Ukraine is entitled to negotiate with the Russians, or anybody in Ukraine is entitled to negotiate with the Russians. Although by far the best way of resolving this conundrum is for Ukraine to have a free and fair presidential election to elect a president with the mandate to negotiate peace and an end to the Ukraine war. I don't expect any of that to happen, because if there was a free and fair presidential election in Ukraine, Zelensky would lose it in a landslide. And I mean a landslide. I mean the kind of landslide that would happen if Keir Starmer were to go back to the country less than 1 year after having succeeded in securing a record parliamentary majority. Never in the history of political conflict in Britain has any Prime Minister so comprehensively lost the nation so soon after having won it. Mind you, only 20% of the British electors even voted for him in the general election less than 1 year ago, 10 months ago. Only 32% of the people who actually voted for him. But he got a record parliamentary majority because of the monstrosity of the political electoral system in Britain. And we, the Workers' Party, which got the best part of 250,000 votes, did not get one single seat in return. But Keir Starmer got many hundreds of seats. But if he were to go to the polls tomorrow, having betrayed the farmers, having betrayed the old age pensioners, having betrayed the WASPy women, the 1950s women who were cheated out of 5 years of retirement, having betrayed the armed forces, do you know what happened today? It was revealed that the Royal Navy, which is now down to 8 surface warships, when I was a Member of Parliament for a Royal Navy warship building yard, Yarrows on the Clyde, our ambition was a 23 surface ship fleet. Now we have 8 at sea. We have 1 working aircraft carrier. But today it was revealed that that aircraft carrier has had no working plumbing for months, and that the sailors aboard it have not had a hot shower in months. So let's go to war. Maybe we can stink the Russians out. We've got a floating coffin that doesn't even have hot running water aboard for the sailors. But these are not the only people that Keir Starmer has betrayed. It would take me all night to adumbrate all the promises that he has broken, all the people that he has betrayed. But I don't, frankly, have time, because I need to get on to quite the most extraordinary night in Riyadh last evening, and repeated now in Doha this afternoon. But let's start with last evening. To the strains of YMCA by the Village People, a global gay anthem, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump rocked the night away. I don't know if His Royal Highness, Prince MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, there was no sign of his father, the King. Perhaps he didn't like the song list that had been chosen. But MBS and Donald Trump engaged in an orgy, not a YMCA-style orgy, but an orgy of flattery and mutual backslapping. But the bill for it was paid by the people of Saudi Arabia, who gave Donald Trump $1.4 trillion. $1.4 trillion. From a country that has not been able to deliver a glass of clean water, from a country that has not been able to deliver a piece of bread to the famine-stricken people of Gaza this whole 2 years. They gave $1.4 trillion to the United States of America. Now, it's not clear in what form this money is going to be delivered. One part of it is going to be delivered in the biggest ever arms deal. Now, Saudi Arabia doesn't really have an army. It doesn't really have an air force. It doesn't really have a navy. Saudi Arabia has foreign mercenaries, including British and American mercenaries, operating what military equipment they do have. But it's not at all clear what they're going to do with another $145 billion worth of military hardware. This is not really military spending. This is protection money. This is the kind of money you pony up for Tony Soprano in exchange for him not wrecking your joint, in exchange for him not allowing anybody else to wreck your joint. It's a protection racket. No more, no less. Who's Saudi Arabia going to fight with its brand new offensive weapons capability? The poorest people in the world? In Yemen? The people in Yemen who are the only people in the entire Arab world still standing, still fighting to relieve the siege on Gaza, which all international organizations now describe as a state of famine. That's F-A-M-I-N-E, famine. Yes, in 2025, when trillions are being thrown on the table, the roulette table, in Riyadh, in Doha, when trillions are being ponied up for President Soprano, famine is cutting a swathe through the Gaza Strip. You see the world we're living in? You see how grotesque all of this is? And then there was the handshake, the mother of all handshakes, and then the explanation of it today. Let me put my cards on the table because I don't have the same position on this as some others that are politically generally aligned with me. I welcome the United States lifting the sanctions on the people of Syria. Not because I support the people who are in practice, de facto, their government now. I oppose them, always, from the first and until the last. But I can't wish even more misery on the Syrian people by a continuation of economic sanctions against them. I also recognize that Jolani is the de facto, for the time being at least, president of Syria. He doesn't need my recognition. He is in effective control of the presidential palace, though it would not appear in control of all armed bodies of men, which is usually a precondition for being recognized as a government. He can't be in control of every armed body of men, otherwise he would be responsible for the massacre of Christians, for the massacre of Alawites, for the massacre of Druze, for the massacre of minorities of all kinds, even minorities within his own part of Islam, the Sunni Islamic tendency. He can't be in control of that. Otherwise, nobody would be giving him tens of billions in order to rebuild the country. But that means if he's not in control of them, he's not actually in control of the whole territory. But I don't know exactly which of those two options is accurate. What I do know is that the Syrian people are hungry. The Syrian people have endured decades now of misery in a long civil war, a war in which one of the civil war parties was backed by the Western Empire to the tune of hundreds of millions, maybe more, in terms of money, to the tune of every piece of weaponry they could possibly carry in the pickup trucks that they mysteriously acquired, and was, of course, also buttressed by thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of foreign jihadist fighters from every part of the Muslim world, and indeed not a few from the Western world. I recognize that Jolani is in control. I recognize that the Syrian people need relief from sanctions. I recognize, therefore, that Western governments are going to, one after the other, meet with and shake hands with Jolani. What I found impossible to accept was Donald Trump's explanation on board Air Force One. It'll soon be Air Force Two because the Qataris have given him the world's biggest and best aircraft to be the new Air Force One. And I'll come back to them in a minute. Donald Trump, when asked how his meeting with Jolani had gone, said this. He's a young man, a very attractive young man, a man with a strong past, a very strong past. If I tell you that 20 years ago, to the day, this day, 20 years ago, Jolani was carted off to an American prison as the deputy leader of Al-Qaeda. You know, the Al-Qaeda that brought down the Twin Towers in the United States, or at least that's the official story. The Al-Qaeda that cut people's throats on camera, including American citizens, including British citizens, including citizens from most countries in the Western world. The Al-Qaeda that cut open people's chests and ate their hearts. The Al-Qaeda that crucified people. That Al-Qaeda. The Al-Qaeda that spawned ISIS. Who was the deputy leader of ISIS? No less than this very attractive, very strong, tough young man that Donald Trump was cavorting with last evening. It's either a grotesque failure of memory on the part of the United States of America about the mass murder of their own people. If Al-Qaeda brought down the Twin Towers, that would explain the $10 million bounty on Jolani's head until 7 weeks ago in the United States. He was wanted, dead or alive, $10 million reward because he was the deputy leader of Al-Qaeda, because he was the deputy leader of ISIS. But now, he's a very attractive, strong, young man. Seriously, Donald? I don't know if Jolani danced to YMCA in that orgy in Riyadh last evening. But if he did, it wouldn't be the strangest thing about what happened yesterday. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.